Well, hello everyone. How's it going? Good to see everybody here today. I can't even talk about what was just going on behind the scenes. But I'm happy to be here right now. This is Trends with Benefits. This is our weekly roundtable tech podcast here at Digital Trends. And I thank everybody for joining us wherever you're watching. We appreciate it. Now, we do broadcast live on a number of different platforms and video as well. So thanks for joining us on that. Hit that subscribe button, but also subscribe to the audio podcast wherever you get those. And then you get each week's episodes. And thanks to everybody who wrote in about last week's episode. We appreciate that. There's been some great comments on that. And we're hoping we have the same for this week. So we're going to be talking about something specific that's going on right now. I mean, there is no denying this. There are protests. There are all kinds of things happening in the world right now. But technology is the focus of what we're going to go to. And that is how to protect your technology during a protest. So specifically, phones are a big part of that. But we have a lot more that we want to discuss. We've got some recommendations, some guides, but we want to hear your opinions as well as we go throughout the show. But let's introduce our roundtable cast of characters here. I'm Greg Nibbler, and to my virtual right, it is
Adrienne Warner, aka Hot Nozzle.
Hot Nozzle.
2, 1.
Hot Nozzle.
There we
Dang
go.
it. You said you were going to count it in too. I jumped the gun. I got too excited.
We're getting closer. Progress.
Yep.
Progress is being made.
All right, Adrienne Hot Nozzle Warner, and to her right.
I am Caleb Dennison, aka the Whiskey Mist, aka Chicken Bone, aka Mullet Man.
Mullet Man. Oh my God. This is why you want to
Wow.
subscribe for the video. Now, this video will be up. Caleb has an immaculate mullet going right now. Was that intentional or was there an accident?
No, dude, this is just how it goes now. Like, I comb it, I comb it back and, comb it straight down, and it just does this unfurling sort of thing. And there's no getting around it. I can't help it.
I think you need to embrace it even more than you already have, and keep this look going.
Yep.
Even after like hair salons and barbers open back up. I think you just need to commit.
Well, in Clark County, I live across the river in Washington, and we're in phase 2, and there are salons open. I'm not going in them. And yeah, I am kind of trying to embrace it. It's really tough. The people on YouTube who watch my videos are not kind. But what else can I do? I'm just going to stick with it. That, or I'm going to try and cut my own hair. I don't know if that's the smartest thing to do either.
I applaud either of those, and the people on YouTube, they're just jealous about what you have going right there. That is a true party in the back that you are cultivating.
No doubt.
Caleb Dennison. All right, the Mullet Man. And on the other end, we have
I am Drew Prindle, aka Professor Prindle. I usually do the history segments, but today we don't have an actual history segment because we're talking about technology and how it relates to like the current moment. So there's really not a lot of history going on there.
Yeah, it's understanding what's happening right now. I mean, and everything's changing, very quickly. But yeah, a lot of people are out in the streets, but we've never had this much technology in combination with that, with what's happening, the social unrest in association with, the Black Lives Matter protests. And there's a lot of questions that have come up about tech's role in that and what's been happening. And that's what we're going to kind of go through today. So we've each kind of divided it up. We've got some information, some recommendations that we have on site. We're by no means the complete experts in this, so I encourage everybody, for everything that we talk about, we've got detailed things at Digital Trends that you can go into, but it's at least a little bit of a guide. And Drew, I think you were going to kick it off with some things that I know a lot of people have had concerns with.
Yeah, first thing we wanted to talk about was facial recognition, which is something that has kind of been a concern in the past, but it's coming into sharper focus as of late because it's being used on protesters. It's more widely deployed than it's ever been now. And it's actually a part of this this justice for police bill thing that they're pushing through now. And hopefully we're going to see some like legislation come out of all of this where facial recognition might actually have some laws around it. But as of right now, it's still very much the Wild West, and it's being used against you in ways that you're probably not 100% aware of. So I wanted to just get into some of that. So facial recognition, just to start off, for any of you who aren't aware of it already, it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's software that sees your face on a video feed or whatever and can recognize you and discern who you are and link your face, even if it's in like low resolution, to your information, your name, your address, credit card numbers, all of that stuff. So it's kind of a freaky technology. the question is how pervasive is this technology? Because I feel like we've been talking about this, and it's been a thing since, yeah, you've got this good video going on right now from like old movies, and it's been around since, gosh, it's like the 80s or even earlier than that. And the thing is, it's everywhere now. So who's using it? We've got law enforcement companies are kind of the main thing, but there's also private companies that are using it. A good example of that is Facebook and Instagram, who are doing the automatic face tagging on your photos when you upload them, and they'll, that's positioned as like, oh, it makes your life easier. You don't have to manually tag people. But the thing is, that is based on software that can be used for not so great purposes. And that technology is now in the hands of a lot more people than just Facebook.
I remember, like, back before the pandemic, I remember how facial recognition technology was supposed to get deployed in airports. In fact, I think it has in a couple where, we all forgot about that because nobody's flying anywhere. But I can definitely see a situation where we return to the airports and resume air travel, and we see a lot of that going on.
Yeah, seeing it applied there. I mean, you just said before the pandemic. I don't remember what that was like, but at one point that was a thing, world we existed in. But yeah, definitely, facial recognition utilized in airports, and I know in like mass transit and all kinds of places.
Well, and you actually bring up a good point with the pandemic thing. It's almost been used as a compelling excuse to get more facial recognition out there, because they want to do tracing of people who might be sick, and they have those temperature sensor cameras or whatever, thermal imaging that can tell, if you might be sick or you're coughing or something. And then they're just using that to say, hey, we're using it to fight the pandemic, when in reality, it's kind of just being used as a silver bullet to get more facial recognition out there and just basically invading everybody's privacy. So just to give you an idea of the scale of this. So the databases that the FBI and cops are often pulling from, and this is according to a Washington Post article that came out in December of 2019. So not the most recent thing, but 6 months, still like pretty relevant. They found that most of these databases that the cops are using contain upwards of 117 million American adults. And that's drawing your face from things like driver's license photos, as well as things like social media accounts. One of the more troubling aspects of this is it's not like government agencies that are compiling these databases. It's often private companies, like, for example, Clearview AI, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard of. They're kind of this company that has just said, screw your rules. And basically what they've done is created a search engine for faces. And they've done that by scraping publicly available, and I say that, quote, publicly available face photos that they find on the internet and also on social media accounts. So they're pulling images that you might not have even uploaded yourself. It could be photos that you just appeared in on somebody else's timeline or whatever. They're pulling all of that stuff and compiling it and then selling it as a packaged product to law enforcement agencies. And the creepy thing is, they have a database that has over 3 billion images. It is by far the biggest database of facial recognition of just like faces ever. And there's really no rules on how they're using it. And it's freaky. John Oliver did a really good bit on facial recognition on Last Week Tonight just a couple days ago. And they actually have some video on there of a journalist who he goes to Clearview and they show him like, yeah, we just put your face in there and here's all the faces that it pulls up because it recognizes you. And then it brings ones back as far back as like high school. This guy's like in his 40s. It's like, my God, you don't even realize how much your face is out there. So the other thing that comes up here is the question is, are they using it against protesters? And the answer is absolutely. So this has happened before. Back in Baltimore, after the police killed Freddie Gray, 25-year-old black man, during the protest that followed that, facial recognition was shown to be used against protesters. They actually, took video footage of the protests, and then the cops ran it through facial recognition software and then use it to pick out people who had outstanding warrants against them and other crimes, and then targeted those people. So they're basically just using facial recognition as a way to quell protests, to kind of silence people and dissuade other people from maybe participating, which is a really chilling, scary thing it's happening. So it's happened in the past. There is evidence that it's happening now in the current protests that are taking place all over the world. So the question that we arrive at now is like, is there a way to combat that, to avoid it? And the answer is like yes and no. We don't really know exactly which, because there's a bunch of different types of facial recognition out there, and some of them are more sophisticated than others. But generally speaking, yes, there are ways that you can fool it because it's based on algorithms. And the way that those work is basically when it sees your face, it finds a bunch of like anchor points and builds kind of like a map
profile.
Yeah, profile. So it's like picking apart distances. So like how far it is from the tip of your nose to like the corner of your eye, or the distance between your eyebrows, or the corners of your mouth to the corners of your nose and stuff like that. And by bringing together all of those points, it can pretty much construct a fingerprint of your face. So in order to bamboozle those algorithms, really the best thing to do is to cover up your face, like hide and obscure as many of those data points as you possibly can on your face. And there have been some really clever ways that people have thought up to do this. One of those that you may have seen is called CV Dazzle Makeup. CV is computer vision, and it's basically this kind of cool way that people will paint like weird patterns and shapes over their eyes and kind of like make certain features look bigger or smaller, or draw weird lines on their face. And that the idea behind that is to just bamboozle those algorithms and make it harder for them to find those anchor points.
Does it work?
So it used to work. After digging into it, we actually have an article on DT about this. It's not as effective as it once was, and that's simply because the facial recognition algorithms have evolved so much. So it's harder to fool them. There are other things. There's this really cool one by the same guy, Adam Harvey, who came up with this thing called Hyperface, and it's like a textile pattern that has this blocky kind of pixelated pattern that it's basically the lowest possible resolution of what a computer vision algorithm would see as a face. And it's like kind of layered all over this piece of fabric. So basically you could wear it as like a bandana or a t-shirt, and then the cameras would see a bunch of different faces all over you, in addition to yours probably. So it's more or less just like filling up those databases with junk data and making it harder for them to run.
So since everybody's presumably wearing masks right now, at least the people who are out on the streets, is that like enough, or would people have to get more clever than that?
Yeah. So based on what I could find, it seems like yes, like that's basically one of the best defenses that you can have. Because first of all, you should be wearing a mask. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Definitely be wearing a mask if you're going to be marching alongside thousands of other people and screaming stuff and spitting droplets everywhere. Please wear a mask if you're going to protests. But that doesn't cover up your whole face. And as we've seen from like the Face ID like unlock systems that Apple, like it was pretty easy for them to develop an algorithm that was fine. It could just like, oh, never mind. We can tell that it's you just based on your eyes and your eyebrows and your nose and other features like that. So while it's not really clear whether or not like low resolution facial recognition on like CCTVs on street cameras can pull the same thing off, but it's probably safe. The best plan is to just assume that it can. So really what you want to do is just cover up as much of your face as you can, wear a mask, wear some sunglasses that have a good tint or like reflection on them, so obscures your eyes as much. And increasingly I'm also seeing that you should cover up your ears if possible, because more and more of these algorithms are incorporating your ears because they're a very unique feature to you and they have a bunch of those little points on them.
Wow.
So yeah, really the only good way at this point that's not going to require you to go out and buy a bunch of makeup and watch a bunch of YouTube tutorials is just cover your whole face if you're going out to protest.
Wear sunglasses, wear a mask, cover your ears. I guess
wear some of those.
Your ears are not something I would have thought about, but
yeah, I found there was a really interesting article on that I found. So yeah, just cover up.
Well, we've got more details about all this too at Digital Trends, because that's really fascinating. I know we need to get some other things too covering that, but that's so important. I also heard that Juggalo makeup would do it, but I guess that's probably not the case anymore. So
I guess that's like CV, under the guise
kind of
CV makeup.
Juggalos were right all along. They don't know about magnets, but they know about facial ID. So going from that though, like if you're going to go down there, certainly your phone is one of the most valuable tools. I mean, of anything that humans have, but right now especially, phones are so valuable. And if you're like me, you're clumsy with them and you drop them a lot and you break them. And there's ways that you can stop doing that and not make that happen. And there's some other important things that you need to do with it. And I know Caleb's kind of researched some of this, other than maybe the obvious of get a case. But
watching that guy drop his phone is so heartbreaking. I think we've all been there. Look, this is common sense measures, right? You're going to protests, and there are a lot of people there. And we have seen some confrontations where there's been, pepper spray, the potential for water cannons, plus just a lot of different people. So I guess the first thing I would say is get yourself a decent case, something that is waterproof, something that has a screen protective layer on it, so that if things get a little bit rough, or even if they just get a little bit crowded and your phone takes a tumble, then it's protected and unlikely to break. That's the first thing I would say, and probably the most common sense thing. But as our good friend Greg has shown, not everybody is taking advantage of protecting their phone the way they should. So it needs to be said. No judgment, Greg. I'm just saying.
It was my kitchen counter, which wasn't where I thought it was when I tried to place it on it in the morning. That's what got it. So it could happen to anybody.
Yeah. It's always something, but especially when you're out with a large group like that.
Yeah.
Also, carry, if you can, carry some sanitizing wipes of some sort and clean your phone. Keep it, you're in close contact with a lot of other people, but again, to Drew's point, there's a lot of potential aerosolized nastiness in the air, and you're using your phone the entire time you're out there. I'm sure you're video recording, or you're keeping in touch with other people, coordinating, whatever it may be. Just keep your phone clean. Again, some simple common sense stuff. But more to the point, there is a possibility that you could get apprehended or arrested. And I would want to make sure personally that my phone was as secure as it could possibly be. So some stuff that you might want to do is turn off the Face ID. If that facial recognition built into the phone could potentially unlock your phone without your approval, turn it off. Same with the thumbprint or fingerprint ID, turn that off. And use the longest string of numbers or characters that you can with your password, so that it is, as we've seen in the past, when law enforcement wanted to get into a phone but couldn't, it was really, really difficult to get in there. And so just, the notion is sort of make it as difficult as possible for anyone other than you to access your phone. Because, you're taking pictures, you're taking videos, it can actually come back around to harm you in some ways. And I think we talked a little bit about this before, and if I'm stepping out of my lane, just let me know. But also be considerate of what you're taking photos of and what you're posting online, because you could be unintentionally exposing somebody else in a crowd, to social media observations by authorities.
And we do have some recommendations. Adrian's got some coming up about that too, specifically with the social media side of things.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, really, the idea is just take a look at your phone, consider the vulnerabilities, and get it as protected as you can, both physically and then also from unwanted access from others.
I think that the Face ID and thumbprint scan is probably something nobody thinks about, because it's so easy if you're running around or if you're in the middle of a bunch of stuff. It sounds so much easier just to open it up with your fingerprint. But clearly that's easy for anybody else too, if you are incapacitated, to just put your fingerprint on that and open it up. I didn't even think about that, honestly.
Yeah, and other than that, I mean, and this is taking it a little far maybe, but I would just turn off Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, which actively send out an identifier of you to all kinds of different access points that may be along the way of your travel. If you've got good, I mean, obviously you're being tracked by GPS by a ton of your apps all the time. If you want to try and get into disabling that, you can, but ultimately your position could always be triangulated due to cell phone location data records. So yeah, I mean, if you want access to the internet and you're going to stay connected to your carrier, there's a certain level of risk there. But to help increase some of the anonymity, I would turn off Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, which send identification of you out to devices all the time.
And you can turn off location as well. I mean, it's still going to have the cell phone ping. Like if you're using your service, they can still there's still ways to get that information if somebody really wants to, legal or not, but there's certainly instances where they've done that. But you can, on iPhones or Android phones, you can turn off the location default anyway. So it's not by default Google Maps, which, in case you don't know, if you use Google Maps, it's tracking you and sends you a monthly update of where you've been, which is really, to me, it's creepy. So I've turned that off. I found out when I got an email, it just said, hey, Greg, here's everywhere you've been, which is virtually nowhere right now, but still, I didn't really like that. So location data is something that a lot of apps are tracking. So you can turn that off. And then a couple other things too, talking about just the phone side of things and communication, like end-to-end encryption is valuable. If you're worried about somebody intercepting something or the security, whatever apps you're on. And there's a bunch that, that are being recommended now. A lot of people are on Telegram, and this is skipping like Facebook Messenger or just regular texting or things that are a little bit more vulnerable, or at least perceived to be more vulnerable. A couple of other suggestions. Signal is pretty popular right now. It saw this huge resurgence. It's been around for a while, and they've notoriously, there was I think it was 2016, and I could have the date wrong. They got a subpoena to reveal information about communication that happened on communication between two people that happened on their app, and they straight up didn't have the info because they don't keep any of it. So they really had nothing to give them other than that. I think it was just like something happened on this date and we have no idea what it is, basically. And it's a good one. They even have a system set up where it will automatically delete the messages. So say you do have communication on Signal, you do leave it on there, your phone does get accessed, and somebody opens up your account, it could automatically already have deleted that for you, whatever the messages are, whatever it is that you want to send. And we've got a lot about Signal to a Digital Trends. It's pretty interesting feature. There's other specific things that they've got on there too that probably Adrian's going to get into, talking about the social media and posting side of things, but definitely important. Another one, like WhatsApp, certainly is one that people are using a lot, but again, it's owned by Facebook. So, if you're worried about that, then maybe skip over to something like Signal or Telegram. And there are a lot of them out there. I'm just mentioning those two because those are the ones that are used by a lot of people. Another one that I found out about this, actually, it was probably about a year ago, and I've actually utilized it quite a bit. It's called Zello, and it basically turns your phone into a walkie-talkie. And it's encrypted communication, but you seriously can pull it up, you add people on, and you just press a button, and it's instant communication with somebody via encryption. It became famous during some of the riots that were going on in Venezuela, because some of their protesters were coordinating, utilizing it. And then from there, it kind of spread to a lot of different places over the world. But Zello is I would suggest looking into that. If you've got a few people that you're trying to coordinate with, there's a lot of people in the crowd. It's easy to get separated. Maybe quick communication, that could be a good one to use. And then the other thing, I'm going through these quick just because I want to make sure we have time here for everything else. But a mobile VPN, that is another good way to make sure people aren't tracking exactly what you're doing. And there's a lot of free ones that are out there that do work. We've actually got write-ups on the website. Like, you can go there if you're iOS or Android, and you can walk through, all the different ones that we've got. But this one called Proton VPN is pretty great. It was created by people at CERN. So at the Swiss, the why am I blanking? Hadron Collider. Am I saying that right? Probably. We'll just assume I am. Anyway.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll go with that. Anyway, the big collider. They're smart people. Let's just go with that. Smart folks created that. But that's a great way to. And if you don't have a VPN on your laptop or computer, it's probably a good idea to get one. There's a bunch of them out there. But essentially, it removes that location data, and people can't track what you're doing. And there's a lot of advantages of it. But that's another suggestion: is get a mobile VPN. So if you are going online, which you probably are, at least it can route your information elsewhere through all kinds of random ways, and that way you're not pinged and located as easy with something like that. So I would suggest that too. But I know, Adrian, you've got some stuff on social media, which is more likely that people are posting on there, especially right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, if you're on your phone, you're probably online or on social media, and especially down at these protests. I mean, it all just comes down to use discretion. Because when we were initially kind of brainstorming this, I literally asked to the group, I was like, can you protect your social media retroactively or actively while at a protest? And I mean, it's kind of up to how, protective you want to be through these kind of measures. Something I wanted to tag on to those messaging applications such as Signal, WhatsApp, or there's a couple others, like you said, like Telegram, and I think there's one called Wire. And actually something that I found interesting, I found this in a Vice article, is that iMessage is actually encrypted, but only if you don't send it to the cloud. So if you back stuff up to the cloud, that is not encrypted. Which I thought was interesting information. But make sure that if you are using one of these kind of bigger messaging apps that has things like disappearing messages, make sure that the contacts that you're connecting with, since they are protected and they don't have identifying information, make sure that those are trusted contacts and that they are verified. You can do this through a lot of those apps. I know that Signal has something called safety numbers. WhatsApp has something called security codes, and that verifies that the person you're talking to is actually who you're talking to. Making sure that there's nobody sneaking in and participating in your conversations that you don't know about. Exactly. So, in terms of beyond messaging and when it comes to actually posting on social, like I said, just be careful. If you want to, a lot of people are sharing information about the protests, especially when they're there. They're doing it either for safety reasons or to share things that are going on that they might find, against the law or anything like that. A lot of people are like going live. They're not considering, the faces that they might be sharing, which other people, that may lead to doxing. So if you want to share information, if you want to share photos, make sure that you're blurring people's faces first and foremost, and that you're also eliminating all of the metadata from the images on your phone. So, if your phone gets confiscated and it has a bunch of pictures of other people, that also may lead to them being identified as well as you. So make sure, like you said, take off, location services. If you really want to get into the nitty gritty, make sure that the apps you have open are not tracking you as well. And then in Twitter, you can double check to make sure you're not sharing your location. If you're posting, you can go into the location icon when you compose a new tweet, and you can just go into the top left and you can tap X to remove your location information. This will only happen if you've enabled it to do that, but you can always double check and make sure that in Facebook your geotags are also removed from photos. And it also in Facebook, if you're using Facebook, turn on tag reviews so that it's AI. If it finds you in a crowd and automatically tags you, you can ask it to not end up tagging you. I have this, actually I don't use Facebook anymore, but a while back I enabled this just because if there's anything that turns up that's incriminating, you want to make sure that it's not just automatically getting traced back to you, that you're able to review it. So there's also a really good guide on how to take location info off of your photos, specifically on iOS on our site. I would imagine that there's probably one for Android too, but just make sure that any information, whether it's through the social media account that you have or through the photos themselves, don't have that metadata attached. And if you want to be really, really careful, just create a new social media account. You can follow all the same people, have all the same people follow you, whatever. But if you want to be sharing things, keep in mind that your employers may be keeping tabs on you, or that if other people are identified, those employers may be keeping tabs on them. So just things to keep in mind. Like if you really want to be active on social media during these protests, you might want to just create a dummy account for that.
That's not a bad idea. Yeah, especially on Twitter, that would be so easy to do.
Right.
Do something like that. There's a guy that we interviewed. I realize we're out of time. We interviewed a guy on Digital Trends Live. I think his name is Noah Konk, and he created this thing called Blur Faces, which is an iOS shortcut that automatically, whatever photo you take, it blurs all the faces and then creates a copy, stripping all the metadata out, so then you can post it quicker. And
yeah, there's a lot of
processes.
There's that one. There's a lot of other like free apps out there that either automatically, within the view, like through augmented reality, like take out all the information and strip the metadata. So definitely go online and check some of those out. Signal too, if you're using Signal, has a tool where you can like blur people's faces out automatically, or just do it in the photo editor. That's also fine.
Yeah, that's you. Well, that's a lot. We've just covered a lot of information in 30 minutes. I feel like each one of these topics could be a half hour on their own, right? But that's what we're just trying to do, is just bring information, make people aware of some different things. And, everything that we talked about, there's far more in-depth articles at Digital Trends, if you really want to dig into it. And I suggest people do. It's good stuff to know regardless of whether you're going out there or not. It's important things to know and understand just how all this works and what your information is being used for and how you can protect yourself, at least to what extent you can and to what extent you can't. It's important for everybody to know that stuff. And that's why I've got all that there on the website. And I do want to remind everybody, we've got lots of episodes too of Trends with Benefits that you can tune into, you can check out, hit subscribe to the podcast wherever you get podcasts, and you get all the back episodes. Last week's was another great one. It was about algorithmic discrimination. So how algorithms do that and how they're inherently discriminatory in a lot of ways. So we've got information on that. And each week will be a different episode. Right now, this is what we're talking about. Next week, well, it'll be a different topic altogether. So hit subscribe, send us an email, podcast@digitaltrends.com, or write any of us individually too. We're all on Twitter and social media, or you can email any one of us. We appreciate that, and let us know what you think or if there's a topic we should cover. And that's it for today. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back next week with another episode.